So I know that everyone in this room agrees on the importance of this work and that we can't do it alone. In order to accomplish this mission, we have to do it in partnership. So it's now my pleasure to introduce our guests joining us here today for a CTE Roundtable discussion. Please join me in welcoming Caroline Jenner and JD LaRock. So I know that you noticed that there's 2 people here, but 3 people on the screen. Unfortunately, Dave Dimmitt, who's the CEO and president of Project Lead the Way, was unable to join us in person, and he sends his apologies, but unfortunately travel issues kept him away. And he did want me to share that Project Lead the Way and NAF have been partners since 2007, and we're one of the longest standing partnerships of PLTW. And he mentioned that serving and supporting NAF educators and students is one of Project Lead the Way's highest priorities, and we continue to look for ways that we can continue to do that. And I echo Dave's sentiments, and since we've both come into our current roles, we've really been committed to building our partnership and expanding how we can ensure that when you put our programs together, there's exponential impact. And that's why we wanted to have this conversation together and with NIFTY and JA, because we know that in the NAF network, these are the programs that a lot of you are also working with, and that we really want to make sure that this conversation can help you think about when we're doing these things together, how we do ensure that it's exponential impact and it's not just a couple things happening in different pockets, but that organizationally we're helping you to do that together. So we're just going to have a conversation and ask each other a couple questions around how we can help to support you and how you can learn more about each of our organizations and how we're doing this work together. So why don't we start with each of you briefly describing your organization's mission and goals for the next 5 years.
All right.
5 years, really brief.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Hey, NAF Nation, how are you doing today? Great to be with you. So again, I'm JD LaRock from the Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship. I know we have many NIFTY teachers and NAF teachers and JA teachers who are all simultaneously doing our programs, and that's really the point of this discussion today.
Absolutely.
And so I'll use that as a jumping off point for the question. So when I think about what we can most powerfully do together over the next 5 years, it is to deepen the collaboration that we have between our mutual organizations and even more organizations that are not represented in this room. For those of you who don't know, NIFTY, the Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship, was founded in 1987. Where are my New York people at? Yeah. So a Bronx school teacher, Steve Mariotti, founded NIFTY back in '87, and our mission was then and remains today to create the next generation of diverse entrepreneurs. And these days, we are doing that in 30 states across the US and in 30 countries around the world. So it's actually such a privilege to be in the middle of the 2 of you leaders, because we are the connective tissue. You're a global organization, you're a national organization. We get to work with both of your organizations to really advance high-quality entrepreneurship education, especially in communities that do not typically have access to that powerful form of education. And that is so important and will remain a guiding star for us over the next 5 years. But Caroline, please.
Thanks, JD. This is my first time in Florida. And I'm a Canadian from way up there in Alberta, but if any of you watched the Stanley Cup, there's an extreme rivalry going on between the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers, so I just want to congratulate you for a job well done, but it was tragic in Edmonton. Tragic. So I know that lots of you are working with JA, and thank you. It's great to know. It's been a discovery. I had no idea the great work that NAF is doing. I've known NIFTY, interacted with NIFTY around the world. But for those of you who don't know, Junior Achievement is, as you said, a global organization. We're working in 115 countries now. We have 6 regional centers around the world, and our headquarters is in Boston. But it's a very, very old organization, about 105 years old now. And that means that at the local level, you create a lot of spider webs of connections and ecosystems around with all of the different stakeholders. And that's what it's about. You just keep multiplying that over and over and over again. And our mission, I think, is very shared, to build, to ensure that young people have the skill set and the mindset to build thriving communities. So despite being global or national, it's really about communities and how they can thrive. And I think another thing is that little by little, you can achieve huge impact. And that's our goal at JA. Right now, we are delivering 17.3 million learning experiences a year. Our strategy is to get to 20 million in 2025. But our big, hairy goal by 2050 is to get to 100 million. And that, if we keep going the way we are in partnership like this, we're sure we're going to get there, and we're sure we're going to get there sooner than 2050, because the momentum feels like it's with us. It feels like the wind of change is coming. There's been huge growth in our field in the last 5-10 years, especially post-COVID. So I'm really, really looking forward to opening up some doors for more partnership.
Caroline, Lisa, I'm curious, how does NAF, how does JA Worldwide specifically work with school districts and partners to implement the programs that you implement?
Well, I think one of the things about it's interesting that we're all older organizations. It does feel like in education, oftentimes it's the new shiny thing, but we are organizations that have been around and really have figured out how we need to refine the design to work within different districts. And so I think that one of the things that's really important about NAF, and I know that we work with a lot of you on this, is how do we make sure that we're flexible to the needs of a district and a community, and that the programs that we're implementing really are meeting those needs, and that we're working with local business partners, and we're making sure that the pathways that we're implementing really are connected to opportunities that exist in the community, that we're working with those local business partners to be a part of the learning experience, that they're coming into the classroom, that they're really engaging with educators to make sure that we're bringing this to life for students, and that we are building those relationships at the district level, that it does become not just a nice thing that happens here or there, but becomes a real commitment by the district of something that is sustained, is really infused into the high school experience versus it feeling like something extra or something that just happens over there. But it really does become the way with the districts that we work with, and we are continually working to make sure that we build those relationships, that we work with districts that are in proximity to the districts where we have big footprints, and continuing to have that amplified impact and ensure that we're, again, pivoting when we need to pivot, we're changing with the changing needs of districts and communities, and continuing to innovate when we need to innovate. But again, building on the foundation we've had for the last 45 years, and continuing to make sure that we evolve it with the needs of districts and communities.
Caroline, working in so many countries must be complicated. So how do you do it?
Well, I think what you just said, that you just keep doing what you do well over and over and over again, and once you get to some critical mass in a country, then you can become persuasive. You can have an impact with a Ministry of Education or an education authority. They will support you if they see that you're working in a large number of their schools. And I think, working with about 300,000 teachers now, those teachers are contributing to that momentum all the time. They're the ones who are saying, they're helping us improve the practice. They're helping us reach other schools. There's a huge multiplier effect. And they're the ones also who are communicating up to the authorities at what's working, what's not working. So I think what you said, that being able to impact school by school, one after the other, but then also pushing those good practices with a joint message up to the district and say, if you lent us a helping hand, we could actually reach all the schools in your district, and we could impact all the young people in your programs. But one more thing that I think you said, Lisa, was that we're actually helping schools do better partnering with the business community. It's very hard to do, and it's hard to do in places where working with the business community just doesn't happen. It's like you're helping them create a new normal, and they really appreciate that it's not a one-off, that it's something you can do year in, year out, sustain, maintain, and it has structure, and it has actual impact on the learning outcomes.
Absolutely. I know lunch is an exciting time, but if we could actually try and keep it down a little bit, it's very noisy up here, so it would be great if we could keep it down a little bit.
Signal to us to get more interesting.
Yeah. Well, maybe I can ask you guys. I'm coming from the outside looking in, and it's a huge space, career and technical education in the US, winds of change, lots of things going on. So what do you think is the future of work-based education in this country, let alone where the other countries you work with? I mean, what's going to happen here?
So you know, I have a unique vantage point from this on this question, because before I was leading NIFTY, I was in charge of workforce development for the state of Massachusetts. And we invested all this money, spent a lot of money on sector-specific initiatives, you know, industry training programs that were deemed to be strategic for the state's economy. And they were good, don't get me wrong about that. But they never really lived up to their potential. And I began to think, why? Why is that? And I came upon the insight that at the end of the day, anybody engaged in the process of learning and work-based learning wants to do something that they're passionate about and that brings their life meaning and purpose. And that's why I think entrepreneurship education is such a powerful foundation for work-based learning. People will gain the skills they need to prosper in any work setting if they are passionate about what they're doing. And so at NIFTY, we see this play out all the time. You know, when I think about the future of work-based learning, a way to answer that question is just to say, I'll let NIFTY students guide us in showing us what the answer is. And when I look at our NIFTY students, let me tell you a little bit about what they consistently do. Number one, they are consistently building businesses and business skills around interesting and innovative products and services. Number two, and this is probably the biggest category of NIFTY businesses, they are proposing businesses that really connect to problems in the world, social entrepreneurship. And I'll say for our students, two big strands in that, and I think it's notable for this generation: climate and sustainability related businesses, and also, interestingly, businesses related to people with disabilities. There is a strong helping strand within the younger generation that is just really inspiring to observe. And then the third, I used to say app-based businesses, but I've changed that up because in the last 2 years, it's been AI-based businesses. And colleagues in the room, I mean, I think you probably see this already yourselves, but I said to my team, I think when ChatGPT came out, I said, I think we're gonna see NIFTY students begin to use this, whether their teachers like it or not, or whether their teachers are telling them to use it or not. And not only did we see students building businesses based on large language model technologies, they were using AI technologies to actually construct their business plans, the financial plans, the visuals, the pitch. So when I think about what the future of work-based learning is, I think we would do best just to look at where the students are pointing the way, because they are showing us what excites them, what engages them, what they want to do, and we need to be paying attention. Lisa, what do you think?
I couldn't agree with that more. And in fact, actually, I had a conversation in the hallway earlier today about, somebody asked me, what do we do about student apathy? And I think that this is exactly what helps to address that issue. You know, students do want to feel engaged in what they're doing. They want to feel like they're also making a difference. I think that that point is huge, that students really are looking to have an impact. And I've been at NAF for about 12 years now, and I would say that that's one of the biggest differences I've seen in students over the last 12 years is, you know, when I very first visited an Academy of Finance, I did hear kids talking about wanting to be bankers and become millionaires and billionaires. I do not hear that from students now. I really do hear a desire to make the world a better place, a desire to have a community impact, a desire to address a problem and be given the tools to really do that in a real and meaningful way. And we see examples of that all of the time. And in fact, actually, even when it's not necessarily part of a project-based learning experience or a work-based learning experience, we see that students are choosing to bring in a social impact piece of a project, or they're choosing to create an opportunity to solve for a real world issue. I was talking to a group of students actually, and we were asking the typical questions that we ask of them, like, what can we do better? How can we meet your needs better? And one of the students was saying that they really enjoyed the project they were doing in their Academy of Finance, but that they live in a food desert. And they felt like while what they were learning and the skills they were getting were really interesting, they wanted to be able to really use those skills to address the issue in their own community. And so I think that the future of work-based learning is really, how do we make sure we're meeting students where they are in the issues that they deal with every single day? And how are we making that a part of what we all do and how we all address the main issues that we know students are facing. And I 100% agree that AI is such an interesting part of the conversation, and how students are really leading the way. I think that most of us can agree that when there's any new technology, it's oftentimes the young people who are showing us all what it can be used for, how it can be used, how we can make sure that it becomes a real part of what we're doing and how we're doing it, and it's a tool and an opportunity versus something that we want to be worried about or scared of. And it is certainly our students who are going to help us figure out what that looks like. And I just think that in terms of how we think about the future and how we think about making sure that students are set up for the future, it really is how we bring that in for them and how we ensure that they feel connected to the work-based learning opportunities that we're presenting, that it does help them have that vision to what a future can be, but it's the future that they want and they feel connected to versus something that potentially feels sort of esoteric or contrived in the big picture future.
And can I just say, and we were talking about it earlier, I'd love Caroline to get your thoughts on this too. We were talking about how we truly feel as people who are plugged into work going on in many states and around the world, but particularly here in the US, like there seems to be no better time than right now to seize the opportunity to elevate work-based learning's place in the conversation about American education, right? Because there's this questioning of the value proposition of higher education. And don't get me wrong, we're not anti-higher education at NIFTY at all, but we're pro students and their passions and promoting that. But there is this dialogue about that. There's the cost of college, and then there is this really, I think, important reckoning that recognition that a one-size-fits-all model could never work for the diversity of humanity and all of their interests. So why not have educational systems that have a variety of pathways? But Caroline, how do you think about that?
Well, I totally agree. I think we have to be flexible. We have to have a different approach to give, and without that sort of dogmatic, here's a very traditional pathway, thou shalt go here, and if you don't go here, you're going to be a mess. That should not be the message. We should support flexibility. There could be, I heard, and in fact it's much more in an AI context, but I heard it's almost like we can support the GPS of learning, that if you want to get from A to B, there could be 100 different ways to get there, and one of them is through CTE, maybe a combination with higher education, whatever. But I think credentialing, for example, is a huge opportunity in this space to give recognition for what young people have learned and what they've achieved, but also support us with the data that we need to do better than what we're doing today. So I do feel like technology plus new thinking about flexible pathways is going to take us in a much better direction for the benefit of young people. That's what I believe.
So we've been talking about work-based learning, and we're in a room full of career and technical educators, and the two concepts are obviously related, but they're different at the same time. So let's draw you out each on your future vision for CTE. Where do you see career and technical education going, Lisa?
Well, I think one of the really important things to think about with career and technical education is exactly what you started to talk about a little bit about what are we trying to accomplish and what are we trying to make sure we're setting students up for. And I think that exactly where you're going in terms of we need to make sure that students see that everything post-high school are options, not there's one pathway and then alternatives, but there's actually just a lot of different options and ways and pathways to success. And I think that with CTE, I think that in terms of how we can make sure that it really is meeting the workforce needs of this country and beyond, it is making sure that we're matching that with employer needs and really making sure, I think that there is a huge responsibility in this country for employers to be very much engaged in career and technical education and really helping to make sure that what students are getting in high school truly is preparing them for what the future workforce is going to be, and that is continually evolving, and we need to make sure that CTE is evolving with it and that we're making sure that students are prepared for what the future looks like. I mean, we know, and I'm sure we've all heard the statistic of Gen Z exists in full. They are in classrooms right now, and there are not nearly enough of them to fulfill the workforce needs for the next 2 decades. So that means we have a huge responsibility to make sure that the students who are in school right now are prepared to fill that workforce, to be successful in whatever they choose to do in their futures. And I think that it really is, we continue to talk about partnership. It really is making sure that all the stakeholders are engaged. And we were talking a little earlier too about, we have an educational system, but I'm not sure any of us think that it is a perfect system. And it really is about how do we think about how career and technical education can help us create a new system and really help us to have an educational system that works for students, that can be flexible with the different pathways and desires that students have, with the needs of corporations across the country and for entrepreneurship and all of the many evolving opportunities for students to have successful futures in the many different ways that they want and they choose. But then for our organizations to make sure we're continuing to build on our foundation, to use the things that we know work, to use the tools that we know work, use the designs that we know work, that have successful outcomes for students, and continue to build on that and evolve that with the needs of workforce, with the needs of companies, with the needs of districts, with the needs of communities, and that we really are finding those gaps and helping to fill them with something that, again, we know has outcomes and we know really is successful for students, and then starting to put that all together.
Caroline, same question for you, and I'm super curious for your response because, again, coming from your global context, there are countries that do CTE really deep and sophisticated ways. So how do you look at the future of CTE from that vantage point?
Well, I think learning a lot from how they have managed to transform CTE into something which is highly sought after, very appealing. It's something that is taking young people to fantastic jobs, very innovative, high in demand sectors. But at the same time, it can be very clunky because being able to shift or pivot when change happens in industry is not so easy when the structure is built like that. So I think what's really important is that we have the possibility of infusing that resilience. You talked about it, JD, that entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial mindset in young people from a very young age, that they won't be fazed by a pivot or a change, that they'll be able to handle it. And that's why I think doing what we're all doing now, by interweaving those softer skills around empowerment, self-efficacy, entrepreneurship, networking, from a very young age. We start at age 5 or 6 here in the States, all the way to 25. And I think if you do that, then it just becomes more natural. By the time you get to the hard stuff at 16 to 25, you're more capable of handling the change. So I've seen that in other parts of the world where that has been a discovery, to actually bring more entrepreneurial spirit into CTE in combination with innovation and technology and STEM in general has been a winning combination. And I think it's starting to take off in more ways than we can imagine.
So as we think about how this all comes together, I think one of the most important parts is what we continue to talk about is partnership. So we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but how can we all continue to work together to support students and make sure that students have access to the opportunities that will make them successful?
Well, I will just use this opportunity to say that our organizations, and especially our two organizations, are already working together. And I love that so much. When I first came aboard at NIFTY about 5 years ago now, I was getting educated on how it works. Because like I said, I was running a state authority. And I must say, and it's not just because I'm at the NAF convention, when people held up the gold standard of NIFTY programs located at a specific school, it was often in a NAF academy. And when I understood why, it totally made sense. Because NAF academies are rigorous, they're organized around a central theme, and to take that rigorous curriculum and organization, that focus, and then combine that with the impulse to add entrepreneurship in its fullness so that you can get rigorous education in a CTE or work-based learning domain and figure out how to turn that into a business is just it's just magic. And I have to tell you, I won't bore you with the details, but as I think about some of the most prominent NIFTY alumni, so many have come through the partnership that our two organizations have fostered. And when I think about our three organizations and all of the organizations in our space, I have to tell you, and we've talked about this, I'm struck by one thing. There is so much to be gained from collaboration instead of looking at us as competitors. Last time I checked, if you put all of our organizations together, we are still barely scratching the surface of all of the students whose lives we could impact in a positive way. And it goes back again to this idea of transforming education into something that is done to students, that is, predetermined and given to them, but really flipped on its head, and especially for this day and age when the world is changing so fast with technology and everything else, that we really start with a student's own sense of personal self-fulfillment. And really, I actually, maybe this is because I'm a former government bureaucrat, I connect this back to founding ideas of the country. Entrepreneurship, for me, connects to a founding idea of the country. Free enterprise, the idea that if you work hard and you've got a great idea, this is a country where you can pursue it and you can be prosperous for yourself and also lead a life of achievement and fulfillment. And even on a more obvious level, can I just point out, we are all the time sitting in businesses. We are around businesses every day, all day. All of us right here are sitting in a business. And if you walk out on the street and you look around, what do you want to mostly see? Businesses. It's so obvious, and yet I don't understand why entrepreneurship education is not a mandatory thing in the American curriculum, given the fact that entrepreneurship, thank you for that, I appreciate that, when it's such an obvious and prevalent part of our society. So how can we work together to support students? Start by emphasizing the obvious things that are all around us, continue the friendship and the partnership that we three have fostered here, and widen that circle because, my friends, I tell you, there is so much blue sky for all of us to do great things together with students.
So well said. Totally agree with you. I think maybe one of the areas of togetherness is that advocacy, that being a loud voice together towards the people that need to hear us, speak that truth about the importance of the entrepreneurship competence for all young people. So I think that's important. And then we've been around some time, all of us. We've got a lot of data points behind us to support our cause. It's not like we've just walked off the street and said, here, voila, here's the new thing. We together could do a lot of thought leadership and research, I think, best practices, sharing with for those schools or those institutions that are not engaging, we could say, here's what works, here's what we could share, here's what we could do together. So I think that advocacy piece, and maybe the last one, is that we have a lot of alumni. outstanding alumni. You heard one speaking, Josh, earlier. We can all name many of them. And that possibility of presenting further opportunities, further community, further networking for people who've been through with our partnership and then could continue to be connected with each other. We've seen that in our network of alumni around the world. They're all building businesses together now. They're investing in each other's great ideas because, well, that's what they have in common. So we won't get further unless we think about how we can push to the next future beyond what we are offering.
Can I add something really quickly? So the question was, how can we work together? Colleagues in the room,
yes.
can I just offer a thought about how we can all work together? We're here doing this panel here right now because there are many examples of you in the room who are working with 2 or all 3 of our organization. If you are
Project Lead the Way is
Project Lead the Way,
yes.
exactly. If you are among those schools, please do us a favor, talk to your colleagues here at this conference about what that looks like and why you think it works. And if you're not among those schools, please talk to us because you are the connective tissue to help this partnership and this collaboration that we fostered get to the next level.
Well, and I completely agree with that, and definitely worthy of applause. And part of why I thought it was important to do this was because we also want to be helpful in enabling this to happen in more districts and in more schools, that we can put these things together. Because when we talked about the future of CTE, all of these things that we know are so important for students that we've all already agreed to. We're all here. We agree that we know that this kind of education works. Being able to do more of it, and you said the word competitors, I just don't think there's competitors in this space. I think there's partners, and I think there's opportunity for more access for students. And I think that we all are very complementary in what we do. As you said, we have so many examples of amazing, nifty winners who have come from NAF academies. We know that we have many examples of NAF students who are teaching the elementary and junior achievement days. And we have so many examples of how this works together, but we also want to organizationally make sure we're making it as easy as possible for all of you to implement this and to do it together and to be able to show that when you put these things together, 1 + 1 is not just 2, but 1 + 1 can be a lot more because of that amplified impact and because students are able to pull from many different pieces of this, because we all do have, we have a similar kind of ethos around what we're doing. We have very different pieces of the design that really are what are transformative in our different programs. So there's an opportunity for us to all just be thinking about how do we put these things together? How do we make sure, again, we are creating more access for students? And how do we make sure that we're also making it as easy as possible for all of you to be able to do this great work? And it's a commitment I certainly have. I know that all of you have, and we're going to continue to, as JD said, ask for your feedback. We're going to continue to also help to provide you with tools to do this easier and to make the case for this too. We know that sometimes that's the hardest part, is just making the case to bring more of this into a school. And we're committed to making sure that we can make that an easier job and continue to create these opportunities. So huge thank you to both of you for coming to nice and cool Orlando in July. And Caroline, I'm sorry about the Panthers, but these things happen. There are competitors in sports, so as much as we are collaborators. But thank you so much for being here, and thank you all of you for being a part of this panel.
Thank you.
So good.